I know you want to speak. You were a very dear friend, and please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Mikulski. Thank you, Senator Boxer. Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to talk about this remarkable woman because I think that, as has been mentioned before, her loss is being felt throughout America for many different reasons. She was a trailblazer, and she was one of the great female role models of her generation. I wrote a book in 2004 called American Heroines, The Spirited Women Who Shaped Our Country. And it was to profile the women who were the earliest trailblazers in different fields: education, sports, politics, journalism. And then I interviewed contemporary women who were still breaking barriers in those fields. In the public service chapter, I profiled Margaret Chase Smith because she was the longest serving woman elected to the Senate in her own right at the time, and she was a true trailblazer. I interviewed then Sandra Day O'Connor, our first woman Supreme Court Justice, and Geraldine Ferraro, our first woman nominee for Vice President of a major party. I asked Jerry Ferraro in my interview with her, what was your most important trait for success? And she said, I think the ability to work hard, and if something doesn't work, to learn from the mistake and move on. That's what's happened with my own life. It goes to the personal side, she said, from watching my mother, who moved on after becoming a widow with 2 kids to support. She was 39 years old. Then I watched her move on and do whatever was necessary to get the job done of educating her children. I'm exactly the same way. I'll do whatever is necessary to get the job done, whatever it is. And then if I do something that doesn't work, I go on to the next goal. I asked her what was her biggest obstacle. She almost laughed. She said, I'm 68. The obstacles in my life have changed with time. An obstacle when I was a kid was being in boarding school away from my mother because my father had died. I had no choice. It wasn't like the boarding schools or the prep schools of today. It was in a semi-cloistered convent. It was lonely, and I had to work hard. I wanted to go to college, but we didn't have the money for college, so I knew I had to get top marks in order to get a scholarship. That was my obstacle then. Money was always an obstacle, she said. I taught when I went to law school at night because I couldn't afford to go during the day. When she applied for law school, she said they would say things to her like, Jerry, are you serious? You're taking a man's place, you know? And then, after getting out of law school, as was mentioned earlier, she was one of only 2 women in her class. She got out of law school and she was faced with the challenge of trying to get a job. But she said, I interviewed at 5 law firms. I was in the top 10% of my class. But she didn't get a job offer. Well, I related to that because I graduated from law school after her in 1967, and law firms in Texas didn't hire women then either. So I know how she felt as she went through obstacle and obstacles and obstacles. But she said, you know, in the end, each thing was an obstacle that I had to get by at the time, but I didn't have too many obstacles because she just picked herself up and kept right on going. She truly was an inspiration and a trailblazer for women of our time. Throughout her life, as a public school teacher, as an assistant district attorney, as a congresswoman and candidate for vice president, Jerry Ferraro fought for the causes that were important to her. And when she learned that she had multiple myeloma, a somewhat rare blood disease that is incurable, she drew upon that same fighting spirit. As she waged the battle with her own disease, Jerry stepped into the spotlight because she knew that if she talked about it with her high profile, that she could bring help to others. Her testimony before Congress was instrumental in the passage of a bill that Senator Mikulski, who is on the floor leading this effort today, and I co-sponsored together in 2001 and 2002. Our legislation gave the research community the tools they need to discover what triggers these deadly blood diseases, to devise better treatments, and to work toward a cure. In our bill, Barbara and I decided to name the Geraldine Ferraro Blood Cancer Education Program for Jerry Ferraro, to raise the awareness and spread the life-saving information about myeloma, leukemia, and other forms of blood cancer. Jerry Ferraro was on the floor of the House when our bill, passed the House of Representatives on April 30 of 2002. Her daughter was in the gallery with my staffer, and there was so much joy in her eyes and her demeanor. But then, Jerry Ferraro went about the business of fashioning the education program. She consulted with the doctors at Harvard, at Dana-Farber, Dr. Ken Anderson, her doctor, consulted with him because she wanted an interactive website, because she knew that doctors all over the country were searching for information on treatment on this disease because they were so unaware at the time of what you could do to help patients. Well, this is personal to me because my brother Alan also has multiple myeloma. And I got involved in this because I watched him bravely fight like Jerry Ferraro was doing. And my brother is a great patient. He's tough like Jerry, he's fighting like Jerry, and he's doing really well. But we knew how hard it was because we watched Alan fight this disease and take many of the same drugs and have the same doctor consultations as Jerry. So Jerry and Alan knew each other and traded information, and the patients in these blood diseases do that. They reach out, they help each other because they know that it's the person with the experience who knows how you feel when you just don't feel like you can get up in the morning. People like Kathy Giusti, who was also a good friend of Jerry Ferraro's and Ken Anderson's, they traded information, and it helped all of them to know that they had that kind of support. So she was an inspiration, and her dignity and grace in fighting multiple myeloma will be one of her trademarks in her life, along with the other great trailblazing things that she has done. Just last month, the women of the Senate pulled together to return the encouragement. We knew that Jerry was having a hard time, and we took a picture of the women of the Senate, and we all signed it around the edges, and we sent it to her, and we said, thanks for being our champion. Thanks for all you do for the women of our country. And Jerry was not just a champion for women running for public office. She was a champion for women to succeed in every field, in every sector. She took the first powerful swing at the glass ceiling. She won't be here to see the woman president who is sworn into office, who will finish the breaking of that glass ceiling. But we will all be standing on the shoulders of Jerry Ferraro, and certainly that first woman president will as well, because she took those first steps, like so many of the early trailblazers in all of the different sectors. The first ones don't see their success, but what they do by showing the dignity and the courage and the tenacity and the grace does prepare the way for the next generation or the next woman to move to the next level. And that's what Jerry Ferraro has done for all the women of our country. I will always remember her friendship, I will appreciate her leadership, and we will all miss her on a personal level, but we will always remember in the bigger picture what she did for this country. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Mikulski, and I yield the floor.
I yield the floor to Senator Snowe.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank our senior